All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe, that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice we can see the Giants, the Padres, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it, if we're thinking here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much, because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here, and we will have these guys. Oh man, that's all right. It's going to get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here. Now that leg is here. Now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist, back out to the front foot, boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down. It's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw. Body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around, giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, so we're going to let your video play through here 2 times. This first time here will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. The second time your video plays through, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike, so that way we can compare and contrast your body's positioning to that of which we just discussed with the quad box of the big leaguers. So here we are at foot strike. Let me pull up my little marker here. And like we discussed with the big league video, at foot strike, and again, that's the moment this front foot, boom, gets into the ground. That is foot strike. We want to be looking at our body into 2 halves, our upper half and our lower half. We want that lower half at the moment of foot strike to have rotated towards our target. So if we look at your back foot, and like we said in the big league video, we want to be driving through the big toe. Think about like folding over that toe, folding over that foot. That helps us both rotate and drive away from the pitching rubber. So our back foot has done a good job rotating. And usually when the back foot does a good job rotating, the back knee is going to do a good job rotating as well, which we can see there. So we have back foot rotating good, back knee rotating good. And when those two rotate well, we know that that back hip then, which is right here, has been able to drive itself forward a good amount of distance, bam, forward. And that ultimately helps get our belt buckle going towards the target. So everything with our backside leg is moving and operating very, very well. So everything back here, real good. We then shift our focus then to that front leg, and that front leg also needs to be rotating around, both the front hip rotating around, the front knee, and that front foot rotating around. Right now, that front hip, front knee, and front foot are all facing first base. We want to get those three as much rotated towards the catcher as we possibly can at that moment of, boom, foot strike. And we can see right now that that kneecap is going more towards like first base dugout, and it's also following the direction of your front foot. And because this front knee hasn't rotated fully yet, hasn't completed its rotation, we can say that it is now blocking our backside from being able to rotate even more. So all the things and movements that you do and the timing and the way that you do them with his back leg could be creating you even more power if this front leg opened itself up more, which would allow things in the back to come on through. We can think about this front leg as a door. Right now, your door is still halfway closed, so the backside can't come rushing through. If we can get this door to be more opened, then this backside can be rushed through a lot more, meaning more energy, more power. So our first mechanical cue or thing that we want to be reminding ourselves with each throw we make, both in catch and on the mound, is that I want to get this kneecap, which right now is facing towards first base dugout, more towards home plate. Because what we're going to notice as we continue this delivery, and like we discussed in the big league video, after that front foot gets in the ground, that's when it's time for that upper body to rotate around. So now comes the time for the upper body to start to rotate. And what we're going to notice is as this upper body comes around a throw, how this front knee is going to buckle, bow, or slide outwards. Boom. You notice that? It's going to be hard for us to get this ball to come out of our hand until that kneecap is more in line with the target. And we can see that the foot is not the reason that the knee was not to the target, because the foot is still in that slightly closed position while the kneecap is able to be towards the target. So even though it appears at foot strike, both the kneecap and the foot are going in the same direction, the foot is fine in this closed off positioning. It's the kneecap that we need to think about getting more rotated before the front foot hits the ground. So that way we have front hip, front foot, and instead of the front knee being over here, we kind of look at this angle and say, I bet the knee would make a lot more sense here. And when we go through that throw, we'll notice that once that ball is ready to come out of our hands, that kneecap is almost exactly where that dot was drawn. So we just need to more fully rotate our front leg, specifically the middle part, our knee, and get it more rotated before the front foot hits the ground, rather than it getting fully rotated as the ball is coming out of the hand. This is going to increase that upper lower half separation we talked about, which means the power we're going to produce is going to increase. The amount of stress on our arm is going to decrease, which means our longevity as a baseball player, but a pitcher specifically, now has increased. Once we're able to get that knee in a better alignment, this next mechanical cue that we're going to discuss is going to become a lot easier to accomplish. And that is when we notice at your moment of foot strike, our trunk, or from our shoulders to our hips, this part of our body is our trunk. Our trunk is nice and tall at foot strike, which is exactly what we want. And what we're going to notice is, if we draw that straight line, as you go to throw and that ball's out of your hands, that's the amount that we were able to drive our chest down to help influence the ball to go down. You are a very tall guy up on a very tall mound and needing to get the ball down very low in the strike zone and even below the strike zone. And with a high or elevated arm slot that you have, we need to really over exaggerate how much of our trunk we send down. A really good example of this, and it's going to be very over exaggerated, but it's going to be Merriweather. There we go. Okay. Merriweather's another guy, or a guy like yourself, who's got a really high arm slot. Okay, so if we look, obviously, third base is blocking his foot strike, but moment of his foot strike is like about right here. So we can see, like you, he's tall with his chest. And now as he's coming through his release, how much he's been able to not just get out in front through release, or at release, but then through release, just how far down he's gone. All right, so he's gone from here down through here. All of this. Driving that trunk down and out. So not only is it going down, but it's going out. So those are the two main mechanical cues for you, bud. If we take a look at a guy like Chapman, who has a similar-ish leg lift as you do, and we just watch at, boom, his moment of foot strike, he's tall, and then as he comes through, how much he's able to drive that chest, drive that trunk down before it then comes up, before we stack it back up after. And then if we got a front view of Chapman, so you can see that front leg's rotation, can use this right here. And we'll be able to see how that front leg, bam, bam. Here's that. And take yours back. Here. Here. Okay. We got similar positions right here, right? You can even take it further back so we can see some more of those. So it kind of kicks it out away. You kind of kick it out away. And then at the peak, it kind of tucks back in. At the peak, it kind of tucks back in. And then yours kicks back out. Chapman's kicks back out. So that's why I said you guys have very similar leg lifts. As soon as I saw it in video, boom, I said Chapman leg lift. But what we're going to notice is as we progress down this mound, we can see how from this moment in time for Chapman, it's going to be front knee and front foot rotating into foot strike. Boom. So that way now he's got hip, knee, foot, a lot more stacked up above one another versus you getting yours into foot strike and now you got your hip, knee, foot. And like I said, with your now quote-unquote door being halfway closed versus a fully open door, how much more this backside is able to come through versus the minimal amount that yours is coming through. I mean, you're still getting it to come through, don't get me wrong, but there's so much more power with this. So those are the two cues. So the drills that we can work for the front legs rotation will be added at the end of this video. All right, so we're gonna let your video play through here 2 times. The first time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And the second time, it'll pause at that moment of foot strike so you can see your body's positioning compared to the positioning the big leaguers were in that we discussed at the beginning of this video. Okay, so here we are at foot strike. And again, foot strike is the moment in time that foot, boom, hits the ground. But what we're going to notice is that this glove is way outside of our body right now. And when our glove gets outside of our body, it's going to start to have influence over our shoulder, which will start peeling it out, which is then going to influence how much power we have on the ball. Because if our energy starts to go this way, that's a different direction than where we're trying to send the throw. So instead of 100% of our power getting to go the direction of our throw, we got 3, 4, 7, 10, 15% of it going in a less than ideal direction. So in order to help us not have this glove travel so far outside of our body, we need to keep it on this side of our body for longer. We need to think about riding that glove out here for longer. Just let it stay out here. Instead, we're going to see how quickly, boom, how quickly it wants to swoop over here. And once it swoops over here, it's going to continue to swoop over there. Okay, so one of our mechanical adjustments, one of our mechanical cues is going to be to ride this glove out. Keep it in this hallway here for longer before it starts to swoop into your body. The second mechanical cue that we're going to want to discuss is what we also talked about a little bit at practice, our set position. We need to be in a good, strong set position. Never, 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 never want to be on the balls of our toe with this leg bent up like this. There's no way that we're going to be able to hold this position for 3, 4, 5 seconds at a time without wobbling, flinching, twitching, causing us to balk. Okay? We also want to be tall when we come set. We don't want to be hunched over. We want to start tall, stay tall. We want to start with our weight back, and we want to keep our weight back. We want to start aggressive so we can stay aggressive. All right? Right now, we're in a very awkward, weak position right here, so it's going to be hard to get aggressive, strong, and quick. So, like we talked about at practice, this front leg is straight. There's no bend to the knee, and it is flat on the ground. The back leg will have a little bend in this knee, and most of our body weight will be back with this back leg. thinking 60 or 65% of our body weight on that back leg and the remaining weight on that front leg. And again, tall. We want our shoulders to be above our hips. That way we can remain in that posture as we go down the mound. The other thing we're going to notice is your arm path. And this is probably the most important thing that we need to work on in order to keep you healthy. When our hands separate, we want this baseball to be facing one of two directions. Either facing the catcher, or for you as a right-handed thrower, facing first base. So we can see right now, and specifically this view, ball is facing the catcher, which we said is good as one of the two positions it can be in. But what we're going to notice is very quickly that hand starts to reach behind the pitching rubber. You're reaching your hand backwards to throw the ball forwards. And not only are you reaching your hand backwards, but watch where the hand goes. Now that ball is facing second base as your hand comes up. Notice that ball's back there. And now that wrist is just going through so many different swivels. Your wrist is just going through so many different swivels. And now the arm can't flip. As we can see, your arm is just kind of a hand on a clock. And now it's just up there. We don't want our hand getting above our elbow until the last possible second before we throw the ball. And we can see very quickly your hand has gotten above the elbow. And now there's nothing for your arm to be able to do to create whippiness. Instead, we're just going to get long and we're going to get a little draggy. We're just going to get a little draggy as we try to get this arm out in front of us. So we need to think, we got to either keep that ball facing home, which is usually reserved for guys that have compact arm paths, short arm paths. You have a very long arm path. So trying to keep your ball facing the catcher is not going to be the way to do it. It's going to be keeping your ball facing first base is going to be the way we do it. If we just threw up a big leaguer for you to be able to see that with, we don't really need to get anyone too specific. We just need to have someone that we can have good video quality with. Okay, let's go. Garrett Cole. This angle may not be the best to see it, but ball's facing first base right there. Still at first base, still at first base, still at first base, still at first base. And now, when does the hand get above the elbow? Not yet. Not yet. Now it is right before he goes to throw. Versus your hand getting above your elbow now, and it's not time to throw, not time to throw, still not time to throw, still not time to throw. Now it's time to throw. So your arm gets up so early that it can't be whippy. We need to keep that arm low and down. So then when it comes up, it's when we're throwing. Okay, let's get a better angle for us. That's not a good quality video, though. Okay, let's get one of these better quality ones. Here, we can still use Cole. So the ball is going to fall out of his glove, and the ball will be facing catcher. Still facing catcher. Facing down. Now it's up. And then it's through. Let's get one more guy. Oh, I don't need to open that. I already got it open right here. Okay, so let's just notice, when does the hand get above the elbow? It's below, it's below, it's below, it's below. Now it's even. Now it's up. Now we're throwing. And if we notice, that hand doesn't flip up until right as that foot is getting into the ground. Foot Front foot is getting into the ground, throwing arm is flipping up. Foot is getting into the ground, hand is flipping up. Your arm is already up very quickly, very early. That adds a lot of stress to the arm. So you and about 4 or 5 other guys on your team, we're going to be doing a lot of throwing our arm path throwing drills. To get even more information on the arm path, see the end of this video. There'll be a good discussion with a lot of examples at the end. All right, your video is going to play here through two times here, bud. First time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up here from these 2 points of view. The second time the video plays, we will pause it at that moment of foot strike so you can see how your body looks and the position that you've gotten into compared to what you just learned and saw with the quad box big leaguers. So here we are at that moment of foot strike, and again, that's when that front foot gets into the ground for the very first time, is foot strike. We want to be splitting our bodies into 2 halves, upper half, lower half. We want the lower half to have rotated towards the target, while the upper half has remained closed or fighting against that lower half's rotation. And we can see that the front leg has done a real good job getting itself nice and rotated towards the target, opening ourselves up to allow that back hip to come on through. And we can see that that back hip drives forward as the back knee rotates and the back foot is able to drive through the big toe. What we are going to notice is when we get this leg up to the very top of his leg lift and that hip starts to go out, we can say that our kneecap is right behind our foot here. And then now we're going to notice how that kneecap is going to almost constantly and continuously fold, collapse inwards. And as that knee is collapsing inwards, it's now leaving ourselves in a very awkward position to try to now rotate this knee around. And if the knee is not rotating around, creating force, we're not creating any power. So we want to think about your first mechanical cue being trying to keep this back knee back for as long as we can. And that way, when it is time to finally rotate that back knee, we're able to rotate it from a stronger position to get more rotation rather than being stuck like right here and trying to rotate it. So an example we can use would be Dylan Cease here. And if we watch when it slows down a little bit and his hips get angled, here's his back knee, and his back knee is still there. It's still back there. It's still back there. It's still back there. So that way, when he can't keep it back there any longer, it's time to rotate. Even in slow motion, we can see there's violence in that back knee's rotation, because he's able to rotate it so much bigger because he had the opportunity to do so because the knee was further back for longer periods of time. So that's one of your mechanical cues, is to keep this back knee back for as long as we can, so that way we can rotate the back knee as much as we can. When we do that, we will be feeding our upper body more power. And then it's up to our timing to be able to capture that and use it with our throw. The next 2 things we talk about are going to do exactly that, help you with your timing. If we notice when you're coming into your set position, we have our hips our feet, one's right above the other, and then we have our shoulders, and those are above the hips. What we're going to notice is very quickly out of the legs peak and during the legs descent, the chest is going to follow the knee. The chest is going to follow the knee. The knee went down and the chest went down. So now we have shoulders, hips, feet. Which wouldn't be a problem if we are going to be a super like true sidearm to probably even like sub sidearm. Not maybe true submarine, but definitely dipping below sidearm. Because what we're going to see is as our delivery continues, look where those shoulders are going. Oh, right back up to shoulders, hips, and foot being more straight in line again. So if we're going to, let's do a wiggly one here, start in line, just to then get out of line, to find ourselves back in line, we can say that this movement here was a wasted movement. And any wasted movements have the ability to disrupt our timing. So our second mechanical cue that we want to be thinking about is start tall, stay tall. Allow my knee and leg to go down while my chest remains stacked above my hips. Start tall, stay tall. That way we don't have a potential timing issue with our delivery. And the third and final thing is the thought process of riding out your glove. What I want you to think about is as these hands separate and your glove, boom, gets out to here. I want you to think about a strong forearm being like a stiff arm, like a football stiff arm, but you're using your forearm to do it. Or you can think like you have a big shield and your forearms wrapped through that shield like Captain America. And now you have a big old sumo wrestler pushing up against that shield. Do not allow him to push this arm into you. We got to ride it out. We just got to keep that glove in this area for longer. Keep riding it out in this lane here for longer duration of time. We're going to notice that glove gets outside of that window relatively early, and now from pretty much this moment in time and beyond, we're going to start to open ourselves up slightly early. And now we can see how the shoulders have begun to rotate before the front foot gets into the ground, which means we have now minimized some of that upper lower half separation that we discussed in the big league quad box. So the third mechanical cue is to ride that glove out longer. And we can use, again, Dylan Cease as a very good over-exaggerated example of that. He's going to have his hands separate just like yours, boom. But now he's going to try to keep this glove in this alley as he progresses down the mountain. He's riding that glove out. He's holding that shield out in front of him. He's not allowing the shield to wrap to his side. He's riding that glove out. And now he can't ride it out no more, but guess what? The foot's in the ground, which means he can start to rotate his upper body around. So those are the three main things. Start tall, stay tall, keep the back knee back, and ride the glove out. The drills that we can be doing to start to work on that will be included at the end of our video. All right, so we're going to let your video play through here 2 times, bud. The first time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And then the second time, we will pause it at that moment of foot strike, so that way we can compare and contrast the things that we saw and learned in the big league video to where we see you at. And then we can discuss things that we're going to want to focus on over the course of the next few months. So here we are at foot strike. And again, foot strike is just the moment in time that front foot, boom, strikes the ground. That is foot strike. At this moment, we want to look at our body into 2 halves, or upper half, lower half. We know that we want the upper half to not have rotated yet. And we want the lower half to have rotated. And we can see that this front leg has done a good job of getting itself in a position that allows the back leg, specifically that back hip, to come on through. And we can see, just like we talked about in the big league video, folding or rolling over that big toe. So that way we're not just rotating, but we're driving ourselves down that mound. One of the things that we're going to want to notice is this front leg. And if I draw a better line than that, our foot is just behind that line, and our hip is just behind that line. And what we're going to notice is that the foot has traveled a lot more. The foot has traveled a lot further than the hip has traveled. So what we can say is that this front foot right now is getting reaching it out there. You're really reaching that front leg out there. But that's the only thing that's really going out there right now. We want to be sending our entire body down the mound along with this front foot. So our first mechanical cue that we can think of before we make our throws on the mound here is we want to think about not reaching that front leg out, but just traveling our whole body out. You do a very good job of keeping this back knee back. And one of the ways that you're keeping it back so well is by kind of just extending this one away, this front leg away from the back leg. However, we want to make sure that when we do have the ability to rotate this back leg, boom, that we're creating not just linear force, but also rotational force. And because this front leg has reached out so far away from us, most of the power that we're creating out of this back leg is linear, or straight towards our target. We're getting a lot of linear, but we're not able to get as much in terms of rotation. So I think we're going to be able to get more of that rotation if our body is able to start going with this front leg, so that way our back leg doesn't feel like it has to get everything going. Everything will already have gone. So let's find... I know who we can use for this. We'll use Zach Greinke. And here's why. So, Okay. So you guys both have not just high leg lift, but the hands are up high as well, right? Both have that nice, slightly backward angled leg lift. And now notice how fast your leg is going to go down, or how quickly your leg is going to lose its bend and extend straight. It's going to start to extend straight very quickly. We watch Granky and noticing how, yeah, it's starting to go down a little bit, but at a certain point, it kind of just stays there for a little bit. It kind of just stays there before it slowly goes down. But what we can notice is as the foot progresses forward, so does the hip, so does the hip, so does the hip. It's not as stick it out-y, as reachy with that front leg. So something we can think about is allow the body to go while the knee still stays up. And that can help us with our first mechanical cue of trying to avoid that big reach with that back leg. The second thing we want to be thinking about is riding this glove out. And we mentioned this with a couple other guys on your team. Something we can think about is your forearm right now is a stiff arm, like a football stiff arm, but we're going to stiff arm with our forearm. Or we can think about our arm going through Captain America's shield, and now we got to be holding that shield off as a sumo wrestler is pushing into it. We've got to make sure that that sumo wrestler's force into our forearm, into our shield, doesn't obviously push our arm back, but there's no way we're going to be able to push our arm forward. We just want to hold it, ride it out. So that way it stays over in this lane here a little bit longer. So that way when we get into foot strike, noticing how this glove is starting to get on the outside of our body, is just going to start to open us up just a little early. So instead of looking over our shoulder is starting to open early. And when that happens, we start to lose a little bit of our power. We're going to lose a little bit of our command, a little bit of our consistency. Not a lot, especially where you're at, but a little. Okay? And if we can just think about riding that glove out, holding it firm right here. Just a nice wall for this force that's coming in. Hold it. Versus looping it around when we do. We're still going to do that same loop and swivel. That same loop and swivel is going to occur. We just want it to occur a little bit later in our delivery. Okay, so that's our second mechanical cue. And when we are able to ride this glove out longer, and when we're able to allow our body to travel more in sync or in line or with our front foot, rather than that front foot reaching out, we will then be able to achieve our third thing more easily, which is getting ourselves to rotate and drive into our foot strike rather than just the drive that you have going. So all three of the things that we are going to be working on here, we're very, very close to it already being there. Like our delivery is pretty darn good for what we're seeing in this first initial evaluation. We do a lot of things really good in this delivery. It's just these small little things to help squeeze out every last drip of velocity. All right, bud. We'll let your video play through here 2 times. First time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And the second time, it'll get paused at that moment of foot strike, so that way we can compare and contrast your body's positionings to that we just learned with the big leaguers. That way you have a better understanding of what and why we are going to be making the changes we are over these coming months. Okay, so here we are at foot strike, and again, that's the moment in time that this front foot gets fully into the ground. Fully into the ground is the moment of foot strike. And we said in that big league video, we want to cut the body into 2 halves, upper and lower half. We want the lower half to have rotated towards the target, while the upper half stays back and does not rotate. It separates itself from the lower half, creating that upper-lower half separation. We can see that we got that belt buckle really going towards the target. We got that back hip really going towards the target. However, that upper body has significantly already begun to come through. So even though we have a lot of that lower body rotated towards the target, because the upper body has also begun to rotate, we have minimized drastically the amount of upper and lower half separation we have, because the direction of your shoulders are pretty close to the direction of your hips. If your hips were in this direction right now and your shoulders were still in this direction, then yeah, we would have tremendous separation. So what we're going to notice is the kind of got a lot of different things going on here. One, we got this kind of like high foot that's going to kind of like fall down. It's going to kind of like stomp down, really hard down. Which is kind of weird. No, I don't say weird. Obviously, it's unique to you. I say weird because I just don't see it a whole lot. That's why I say it's weird. And I'm thinking it's probably because there's a lot of things going on in this leg lift here. It's a slow leg lift. Like, of all the guys, your video is definitely the longest. Because of how slow and long it takes for this leg lift to go through all of its different movements here, right? We can see it's kicking up and then out away from my body. Then it continues to go up. Then it's coming into my body. Then it's going down. Then it's going away from my body. It's got a lot of moving parts, and your body doesn't start to go down the mound until after that leg does all of its different movements. Maybe it's something that we're going to want to look at addressing. But as of right now, it's not something that's going to be of a concern to us. What we are going to want to look at is when we're in this set position, we would like to get a little bit taller with our chest. We don't want to be hunched over. Okay. We want to be nice and tall and strong here. So that way we can remain tall and strong. All right. Instead, we started hunched over a little bit, and then we get super hunched over, only to have to get back to being tall again at foot strike. So our first mechanical cue that we want to be reminding ourselves is we got to start tall, and we want to stay tall as we go down the mound. Start tall, stay tall. Okay. And I just used this video to show one of your other teammates a good example of that start tall, stay tall. So here is Reggie Crawford, upper 90s, 100-mile-an-hour dude. And we need to see throughout that whole leg descent, he's staying tall. He's keeping his shoulders stacked above his hips. His shoulders are staying stacked above his hips as he goes down this mound. Okay? As soon as you start going down your mound, your shoulders are no longer stacked over your hips. They're no longer stacked over your hips until they are, right? So start tall, stay tall. Okay? You're a tall dude. Why make yourself shorter on the mound? We don't want to be doing that, all right? Start tall, stay tall. Start tall, stay tall. Okay. Second thing we need to be thinking about is I need to ride this glove out. I get this glove into a great thumb down, palm out position. This is fantastic here. But now we got to try to ride this glove out longer in this alley here. We got to keep this glove traveling towards the target, but in this lane for longer. What we're going to notice is very quickly you're trying to swoop out of there, swoop out of there, swoop out of there, swoop out of there so early in relation to when this foot's going to hit the ground that once it starts going this way, swooping that way, it's going to probably want to continue to go that way. And like we said, at your moment of foot strike, your shoulders are getting slightly opened. So the first two things that we have discussed here, start tall, stay tall, and ride my glove out longer, those two together are going to help your shoulders not want to open up early at foot strike. Instead, you'll be able to be looking down your shoulder when this foot hits the ground. Why? Well, if your body isn't having to go from tilted over this way to lifting itself back up this way tall, which way are we having to send energy? This way. And like we said, once energy starts, it's hard to expect it to stop all of a sudden. So if we're not having to lift ourselves back up to tall, maybe we don't over adjust and now we're not opened at foot strike. That's one way that we could clean up this upper body. The second way is just let's ride this glove out longer, right? If this glove is over here for longer periods of time, that means it has less time to get over here. And if it doesn't get over here, we're not opening up. Okay, so in the beginning, we mentioned that our upper-lower half separation wasn't ideal because the upper half is already starting to come through. Well, our two primary mechanical cues, start tall, stay tall, and ride my glove out, those two combined should help that immensely. Okay? The final thing that we want to think about is we can notice how, obviously, like we have mentioned, the upper body is rotated at this point in time, but also it's starting to lean forward a little bit. We want to think at this point in time, we're tall. At foot strike, our shoulders are tall. So if we just grabbed these 5 guys and just opened all of them up, okay, Nola at foot strike, and this is a bad angle. It's not straight to the side. Good, we'll use this one. At foot strike, boom. A lot more above the hips rather than having it slightly leaning forward. At foot strike, tall above the hips. At foot strike, tall above the hips. At foot strike, oops, how'd that get there? At foot strike, tall above the hips. Okay. But again, the start tall, stay tall, and ride the glove out, those two combined are going to help with that. So yes, we have 3 mechanical cues, but the first 2 are going to help the third. So start tall, stay tall versus this hunch over that we're going to have right now. And then we're going to have to revert that back to get here. And now we're already starting to open up. especially if we're going to be a way over the top arm slot guy like you, we need to stay closed as much as possible because we got to throw down. And if we're already opening up, down becomes this way rather than down this way. All right. Last thing we're going to talk about with you is not in mechanical cues, but if we're going to send power down, we got to send the trunk down, right? And if we're going to send the trunk down, this needs to become a teeter-totter. So as this goes down, this is going to be going up so that this stays flat. What we're going to notice is that this stays down and this then can't go down anymore with the throw. So if we get one final big leaguer here to really show you a great over-exaggeration of that, I don't know what his first name is. Merriweather, Merriweather, where are you at? Merriweather, Merriweather, where are you at? There we go. It's Julian. Okay, so Merriweather, very high arm slot like yours. Okay, but let's watch as he gets through release. What happened? As the chest goes down, the leg comes up. Drive everything down. Drive everything down. Boom. Through release. Slide him over there. And we'll get you through release. Drastic differences there, right? Release. His release. About right there. So similar out in front. Similar out in front. Similar here. Similar here. Similar here. But then through your release, you're just letting kind of the hand go versus the body going. The body going. Okay, so aggressive, violence, drive things down that mound with power and aggressiveness. All right, bud. We're going to let your video play through here 2 times so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And then we'll play it a second time. We'll pause it at that moment of foot strike so you can compare and contrast your body's positioning to the big leaguers that we discussed in the beginning of the video. And then we'll mention the things that we're going to want to focus on over the coming months to help you become a better pitcher. So here we are at that moment of foot strike. So again, when that front foot gets into the ground, that is foot strike. We want to be cutting our bodies into 2 halves. We can see here, front shoulders opened up just a little early, and we can start to see that throwing arm starting to come through. This throwing arm is visible right there. So our shoulders are starting to come through a little early, which is going to minimize a little bit of our power, but it's not that big of an opening to where we're going to want to really spend too much time on it, okay? There's also something that we're going to mention here in a moment that I think will help clean that up all on its own. But let's continue onwards with some other things that we can notice here. We can see that you stride slightly, so heel, toe of the back foot, you stride slightly across your body, which is not an issue. There's no problem. Plenty of guys throw across their body. The one thing that throwing across your body becomes a little bit more difficult in is getting this back hip to drive forward. And that's because this hip is kind of going across that back hip. So it makes the back hip a little bit tougher to get through. And in order to get that back hip through more, we're going to need to rotate that back knee more. And in order to rotate that back knee more, we're going to need to rotate the foot more. You start it, but it doesn't finish the rotation until after that front foot hits the ground. And we can see now is when that foot is really getting the last turnover. Now is when that knee is really getting turned over. Now is when that back hip is really coming through. So this wasn't anything in your mechanical cues that I mentioned, just because it's not really the biggest of things for you, but it's definitely going to be something that eventually down the line we'll want to work on to help you create even more power. So let's actually get into our first mechanical cue, and that's going to be we're in this good tall position to start, and then as soon as our leg starts to go down, our chest follows that knee. So we're going to see as that knee goes down, your chest is following that knee down. So now instead of being tall, we're now in this position. Which wouldn't be an issue if we're going to be a low 3/4 or even sidearm submarine guy, arm slot. But what we're going to notice is your body knows that it's got to get back up to being tall again in order to throw this baseball, because we have a 3/4 arm slot. So if we're going to start with shoulders stacked above hips, and when we get into foot strike, boom, foot strike, we're going to have shoulders stacked over hips, then we could say there's no need for us to get those shoulders unstacked from the hips. So our first mechanical cue is we're starting tall. Let's stay tall as we go down this mound. Start tall, stay tall. And a really good example of that, let me get this guy named Reggie. Oh, that's because he's in the front view. I'm in the side view. That's why I couldn't find him. Reggie Crawford, drafted, as you see, in 2022 from UConn. He's in upper 90s into the 100 mile an hour range for velocity. So let's just watch how, obviously the video doesn't start in the very beginning, but he's tall. And notice how as that leg goes down, his chest stays tall. His chest stays tall. Oh, why is this not playing no more? Oh, no. Sorry about that, bud. So you see how you're hunching over as he's staying tall during that? Your chest is following the knee. His chest is staying tall. Okay. So we just want to think about being tall during the leg's descent. Ascent is up, descent is down. While your leg is traveling down, we don't want your chest to go down with it. We want to keep it tall. All right. Start tall, stay tall. That's our first mechanical cue. Our second mechanical cue is going to involve our arm a little bit. Not the arm path. The path you take is great. It's safe. It's healthy. I just want you to imagine the distance from your back hip to your throwing hand stays a little bit more constant or the same. We're going to notice, let's just say, and this is no way to even know, but let's just say this is 1 foot distance. We would then say this distance is 2 feet. And we would then say this distance is 3 feet. And then it's still at 3 feet. And now it's getting closer to like 2 feet. Right? So let's think about trying to keep this ball a little bit more constant in its distance from my hip. The arm will load up back towards first base instead of loading up back towards second base. That way, the distance between the two doesn't increase because the arm doesn't go further back behind the pitching rubber, but it stays with our body. So let's get a couple examples of that here. Shall we? And just notice how that arm's not going back behind the pitching rubber. It's staying at like an equal distance from the back hip. It's just working its way back towards, for him, first base to load the arm up. We'll watch that in slow motion. Then we go back to you, and we can see how your arm is just extending straight back towards second. Yes, it's going back towards first as well, but we got a lot of it extending away from our body towards second in addition to that. Let's take a look at another guy. Right, so that ball's distance from that back hip doesn't really extend or increase as that ball travels because it's not going behind the pitching rubber to second. That elbow is loading, his throwing elbow is loading the ball back towards first base. So again, we'll watch that in slow motion. So we just want to think about keeping that ball traveling with us, rather than the ball traveling away from us. You can use a guy like Chapman, who's not only throws extremely hard, but has been throwing extremely hard for a long time. And we can see the same thing. That ball, obviously he's left-handed, so that ball is loading into third base. But again, it's not extending away towards second base. It's extending back into his back muscles. That elbow is loading up his scapular muscles. The scapular muscles, if you just pinch your shoulder blades together, you imagine there's a pencil on your spine, and you got to hold that pencil there. Those shoulder blades pinching back, those are your scapular muscles retracting. We want to use the back muscles to load our arm up for us. We want to load our arm to our back, not load our arm to second. So really just those two things. Start tall, stay tall. Which if we're, and like I said, how we mentioned that the front shoulder was getting open just a little early. Well, let's think about this. If your body is leaning over this way and it knows it needs to get up to this way, which way is it going to send energy? Towards first base. And once energy starts to go towards first base, it's going to be hard to stop it from going towards first base. So that could be a reason. Another reason that glove could be going over there. How is this body going to stand itself back up? Maybe it's by using the glove, swinging it over here a little bit. Swinging the glove over here a little bit helps get my body over here a little bit, right? So there's a couple ways that we could expect that glove to do what it's doing or explain why it's doing what it's doing. So like I said, it's nothing going to be having to focus on the glove itself. I think just the thought process of us starting tall and staying tall will clean up that glove automatically on its own. So like we'll learn the more you play this game, especially with pitching, fixing one issue could change and fix 3 other issues later on in your delivery that you weren't even trying to fix. But that one change early changed everything else later. And I think that's an example here of we changed this posture early and we'll change our posture later as well. All right, so your video is going to play through here 2 times, bud. First time's all one motion, so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. The second time, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike so you can see your body's positioning compared to the big leaguers' positioning that we talked about in the beginning of this video. And then that way you can more easily understand what it is that we're going to be trying to work on over the coming months. So here we are at foot strike. Some things that we can say are really good at this moment in time is our arms, throwing arms positioning, getting into that 90-ish position that we talked about. We're also looking right down our shoulders, so meaning our upper body has stayed closed up until this point in time, which is excellent. We can see this front leg here has done a good job of getting itself rotated into its foot strike, rotated into its foot strike, rotated into its foot strike. The one thing we are going to notice, though, is when we watch this back legs rotation, we're going to notice that it's doing a lot of rotation in place. And what I mean by that is if we just watch this back knee, notice how it's just kind of rotating in place here. Just kind of rotating in place here. And if we watch more specifically the back foot, we're going to notice or understand why the knee is just kind of rotating in place. So we can see that the knee is trying to rotate. But because the foot hasn't started rotating yet, it's making it so that the knee's rotation is right in place. It's not really traveling a whole bunch forward. Obviously, yeah, it's going forward, but not nearly as much as it could if the foot was also rotating at this time. Let's see, who's someone that we could... I don't want to get someone that's drastically different than you. Let's see here. Let's pull up... It's not exactly, but it's a little TJ-y. Okay, so get this, boom, and boom. So there's, yeah, we got that little nice angle, that front leg, We have an aggressive over our body glove, boom, and boom. But now let's just watch as the knee starts to go. Yeah, it starts, but then watch the foot. Bam! Knee starts to go, but then the foot, bam! Really gets going. We get your knee to really get going. Now the foot's in the ground. Your front foot, rather. Your knee really gets going, and now your front foot is in the ground. Front foot is in the ground. So before your back foot gets time to really do its rotation and its drive, see right there, it's trying to. It's just a tad late. So we just need to be thinking one of your mechanical cues is going to be fire this backside sooner. And more specifically for you, the backside is going to be referring to this back foot. You do this movement that we want it to do, you do it right there, right there, right there. That's the movement we want your back foot to do sooner, so that way it's doing this movement before the front foot hits the ground. Right now, the movement that you're doing, the foot's already in the ground. The foot is already in the ground. While we're really getting that last, and if we notice, as the back foot does that movement that we're talking about, watch how much this back hip gets influenced by it. Boom! Look how much that back hip is driving forward now. Boom! Boom! We want that effect to occur as that front foot is hitting the ground. So you already do the movement well. We just need to do it earlier so we can complete the movement on time. And on time refers to when the foot hits the ground. Right now, we don't do all that good movement until after the foot hits the ground. We want to do all this good movement before the front foot hits the ground. That's your first mechanical cue. Okay. Second mechanical cue, which I probably should have mentioned first because it is earlier in the delivery than the back foot rotation that we just discussed. And that's a good, strong set position. And we discussed this a bit at practice. And we can look right here. Most of your body's weight is going to be over on this front foot. What we also know about a mound is for about the first 4 to maybe 6, 8 inches from the pitching rubber, it's flat before the mound starts to slope down. So that means this foot is at a lower elevation than this foot is. So already our body is wanting to go this way. So if we have most of our body weight over this foot, too much of our body weight is over here. And we know that because if we draw that same line here again at your face, in order for you to get this leg up off the ground, watch where your body's going to have to go. You're having to rock back to get that leg up. And now we have to try to stop that rock back and redirect ourselves forward. So now we're just having to use a little bit of our energy and power to redirect ourselves. So we're going back. I got to use some of my energy and power to stop going back. And now I got to use some more of that energy and power to redirect myself forward. So now as I'm going, I'm left with just a little less power because I had to use a little bit of that power before I should have. So if we start in that better position with our body's weight more back here to begin, boom, and now we're in our set position with this leg being just like right here, nice and straight, this leg bent. Now we can say we got 65% of our weight on this back leg and the remaining 40 or 35% of the body's weight on that front leg. So if we can start in a good, strong set position, we have great opportunities to continue down the mound nice and strong. But if we start in a position that's not as ideally strong as we could, we're going to lose some of our strength as we go through our leg lift. Okay? So we want a good, strong set position that has our feet closer together and more of our body weight on the back leg rather than most of our body weight on that front leg. Then we want to think that second cue is get that back foot to fire sooner. Okay? And the third thing we want to think about is we just want to clean up this arm path a little bit. Your hands separate phenomenally. Boom. We're right where we want to be. That ball is facing first base just like we want it to. As the hands separate, we can see how now that ball has gone from facing first base to now facing second base. And now it's still facing second. So now, as my foot gets into the ground, and that ball is now facing the sky. And now, as I rotate to throw, because of all this happening, look at my head now. My head is really trying to get things going. Head is really trying to get things going, and now I end up slipping underneath this baseball. So now look, we zoom in over here, and we got this hand, pinky, ring finger, thumb, index finger, and this right here is the baseball. Our hand is underneath. Our hand is underneath the baseball. Trying to make throws from this position puts a lot of stress on the arm. Because now at the last second, we're trying to get behind the baseball. See how we're trying to get behind the baseball there at the last second? And that's where a lot of additional stress gets put onto the arm. You do a lot of good things powerfully, aggressively. It's just that arm opening up. The arm opening up. Opening up. That's going to cause us an issue. When this arm loads back, like you have it loading back here, we want this elbow here to keep loading back, but not let the hand get beyond the elbow. We can see how the hand has gotten beyond the elbow. Let's get some guys here that we can look this at, or look for this. Let's find someone that's similar to you here. Because we already used TJ once. I mean, we could use TJ again. It's a little blurry. Let's get someone that we can see more clearly, huh? This, and then we go up to here. And let's go. Here we go. Ray Black. All right. Obviously, this is from the back side rather than the front side. But what we're going to notice is as that ball comes out of his glove, that ball is facing us. The ball is to his back. And it continues to face that direction. Whereas as we get you through this motion right here, your hand goes from this good position to that position. See how you're opening up that hand? Versus trying to just keep it there, keep it there, keep it there. So that way, as we flip up, that ball is facing now third. It was facing first. Now it's facing third. And now we're always behind the baseball. You see that? Always behind that ball. And the way he's able to do that is because of how his arm was the entire time leading up to that. Okay, let's get another guy for you to see. Let's go with, this has got a good slow-mo one in it. Okay, so now we're back to your view. Okay, so we get boom and boom. Very similar, right? Hand, hand, ball facing first, ball facing first. Ball still facing first. Ball is now facing second. So we can just see how those two just change, right? Boom. Versus this. Your hand is getting even with your elbow too early, too soon. We're going to notice that Kyle Wright's not going to get his hand even with his elbow until much later in his delivery. His foot is almost in the ground when his hand and elbow get even for the first time. Up until that point, the hand is always beneath. And now it's even. So then it can flip up. So now the ball went from facing first the whole time to boom, now it's facing third. To now the hand's behind it the whole time. Okay, so you're not the only guy that needs to work on arm path drills, but of the guys that need to work on arm path drills, you are the closest to being where we want to be. We just need to get ourselves out of a position where the ball is facing second, and then we got to get it spinning around 90 degrees to get to here, and then it's going to continue spinning more, and because of that, now we get it to kind of fall under the ball. Once we get that arm path cleaned up, everything else that you're doing, we're going to be in a real good position. All right, so we'll let your video play through here 2 times, bud. Excuse me. The first time will be all one motion. so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And then the second time your video plays through, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike, so that way we can see the body's position compared to the big leaguer's body's positions, and then we can discuss the things that we're going to want to focus on over the coming months to help you become a better, healthier pitcher. So here we are at foot strike. Some of the things this is list off that you're doing really well at this moment in time is we have gotten, let me get my marker back up here. One thing that we're doing a really good job of is we're getting this front leg nice and rotated towards the target at that moment of foot strike. We're doing a real good job of getting this glove to swivel, bam, into our chests as to not allow our shoulder to open up early. So real good job there as well. Another thing that we can see is that we do have the ability to gain ground with our back legs rotation because we have driven through that big toe. So we have started the process of getting this back hip to drive forward. But what we're going to notice is that this back knee doesn't stay back very long. It's already on the move. It's already on the move. It's already on the move. It's already on the move forward. So every time your body's going forward, so is that back knee. So now when it comes time, somewhere like in this window here, when it comes time to rotate, it's very difficult for you to rotate because it's already collapsed inward so much. What we want to be thinking about as our body descends down the mound with our front leg, we're trying to keep this back knee back. So if we pulled up someone here to use to help you see that, we can use Coop. Obviously, we know he's left-handed and you're not. That's not a big deal at all here. Let's just watch that back knee and see how it's still back. If we got you to this similar part of your progression of your delivery, we'd be like about here. And we can see how this knee is already starting to go in while Coop over here, his knee is still staying back. So that way, when it comes time for him to make that throw, back, 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 back. Can't keep it back much longer. So now it's time to rotate it all the way around. Versus when it comes time for you to start to rotate yours, about right here, it's hard to rotate from this type of position. And that's why I just kind of, rather than really turning over. So your first mechanical cue, bud, is going to be keep my back knee back. So when it's time to rotate the back knee, I can rotate it forward as much as possible. If my knee is already collapsing, drifting, or folding in forward, when it comes time to rotate forward, I'm not going to have as much to rotate. So I'm not going to have as much power that I can produce with my lower body. That isn't the most important mechanical adjustment or mechanical cue for you. However, we need to make sure we're keeping this arm safe. And what's putting us in a position right now to not have a safe arm is how your hand is coming out of your glove. We're going to notice as soon as that glove gets out of the way, boom, your hand has inverted itself. When the ball is in our glove, we have our hand obviously holding onto the ball, and the ball is being pushed into our glove, which means at this point in time right now, the ball is facing us. Which means when your hand falls out of that glove, if the hand just fell straight down, the ball would be facing first base. But we can see you invert your hand, you turn your hand over, And now your ball is facing third base. This is where we're going to get put into a position where we're having tremendous amount of stress be put on our arm, because our arm path is going to be very inefficient, very long, potentially draggy, maybe a little casty, maybe a little pushy. There's a lot of different things that can occur when our arm does not move properly. And because of how your hand is positioned right here, you have zero chance for your arm to move properly. And what we're going to see is your arm is just now going to move like a hand on a clock from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And then somehow it's just going to have to chill up there until it's time to throw. So what we're going to notice is, just like I said, it's going to run this clock with your hand facing the same direction the entire time. Now it gets up here. Now it's got to just chill. It's not going to chill, though. It's going to keep wanting to move. And now that hand is becoming in towards your head. And now that ball is going to go out away from your head. We can notice that on this video here, how that arm is going to go away from your head now as you throw. Away from your head now as you throw. We need to think when this ball comes out of our hand or out of our glove, it just falls out of our hand. It falls out of our glove. We go back to Coop here, and we can use even just the front view here. And we'll see as he brings this ball out of his glove, where's the ball facing? Behind him. It's facing, for him, third base because he's a lefty. If he was a righty, it would be facing first base. So right now, we can't really see your ball here, but if we try to zoom in as much as we could, we can see that's top of your hand with ball facing that way. That's your thumb right there, and the top of your hand right there. So let's take us back to Coop, and we can see not only does the hand fall out of the glove so that the ball is facing behind us, but it stays in that alignment. It stays like that. So that way, when the shoulders rotate, the arm can flip up. And then as the shoulders continue to rotate, the arm can flip back. And then as the shoulders continue to rotate, the arm can flip forward. We'll be able to see that same thing with our side view. We'll see as Coop gets the ball out of his glove, where is it facing? Behind him. Where is your ball facing? In front of you. So your arm is completely the opposite direction that we want it to be at right now. Because Coop has his hand in the proper position, he gets to load his arm behind him. Load his arm back. Behind his back. You're loading your arm up back towards second base. You're loading your arm up behind the pitching rubber. You're going backwards to try to throw the ball forwards. We need to load the ball into our back muscles so that way the arm stays with us. Notice how the arm is going with him because he loaded it into the back muscles. You loaded your arm back into nothing over here. And that's why your arm does not stick with your body. Your arm is going the opposite way from your body. Your body is trying to go forward, and your arm is trying to go backwards. You're getting everything further away from one another, whereas we want that arm to stay with the body. Let the arm travel with the body. So we're going to be doing a lot of arm path drills with you. You're one of like 5, maybe 6 guys in your team that need to be working on their arm paths. You're not alone in this. But we don't want to be working a clock-like motion. We want to keep that hand internally rotated. You have your hand externally rotated right away. Internally rotated hand, and keep it that way. Thinking about the top of my hand is facing the same direction that my chest is. Or the ball faces my butt for the entire time my hands are moving. All right, so we're gonna let your video play through here 2 times, bud. First time will be all one motion, so you have the opportunity to see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. And then the second time, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike. So that way you can see your body's positioning compared to the big leaguers' positionings that we discussed at the beginning of the video. So here we are at foot strike, which again is that moment when that front foot gets all the way into the ground. And we can see with you, we're a big heel first guy. I did not note this in your mechanical cues, but this is one that we're going to want to address. And the easiest way for us to work on this is just to be off the mound more often and more frequently. The more that you know the angle that this mound is in, the slope that we're working on, we can get our ankle to match that with our foot, so that way we land a little bit more flush on this mound rather than it taking all of this time to finally get that foot into the ground. So that's one thing I did note in that mechanical cue portion at the beginning of your video here, but it's definitely something we want to think about. And I like to call this the gator chomp, right? Right now, we're doing a lot of gator chomping. We don't want to gator chomp into the mound. We want to just land nice and flat and flush, like an airplane landing on the runway, nice and flat, or like a duck landing on water. We don't want to be landing like a tree falling on the ground or like a gator chomping its mouth. What we want to think about is before we talk about the foot strike positioning, we talked about this a little bit in our session, was our set position. We want to make sure we start in a strong set position. And what that means is we don't want both knees bent. We want just the back knee bent, and we want this front knee straight. And when we get this front leg straight and we have this back knee bent, we're going to be able to get our body's weight shifted back. Right now, we can see that most of your body's weight is probably on this front foot, or it's 50-50, it's right in the middle, which is going to make it really difficult to get this leg to come up aggressively without this body either having to rock back or start to tilt forward as it comes up. So starting in a good, strong position is going to allow us the opportunity to continue to be strong down the mound. So thinking that back knee's bent, front knee is not, so that way I can get more weight onto my back foot, back leg, than I have on my front foot or front leg. I personally was always thinking kind of like 65% on my back leg and the other 35% was on my front leg, but that was just me personally. Because what we can see is just how much from the starting position of your head to be able to get that leg up, we're going back a little bit. And good base runners are going to start to see that you're having to shift it back. And I even cut the video later into this shift than it really started at. You started probably a little bit more closer to here in the original video. So good, strong set position is our first mechanical cue. Start strong so we can stay strong. And strong means weight back. Our next mechanical cue, or our next 2 mechanical cues kind of go together. Achieving one mechanical cue is going to help the other mechanical cue, okay? And what we're going to notice here is if we draw a little marker where your chin is at, and we do that same thing once we get you back to here, we'll do another line where your nose is at. And what we're going to notice is that we're going to be going down a whole lot more than we're going out. Boom. So here's our chin. We've gone down this much. And here's our nose. We've only gone out that much. So we can see we're going down at a lot faster rate than we're going out. And now that we've gone down, 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 we're going to try to go out, out, out. Why is this not playing? Now that we've gone down, 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 down. Now we got to try to find a way to, one, stop that downward momentum and redirect it forward. So now all we're doing is going forward, 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 forward. So our route down the mound was very L-shaped. And going all the way down and then trying to go all the way out is not the most efficient, effective, aggressive way to go from up here down to here. And we can use something from the Mythbusters, which I don't even know if you're old enough to know what the Mythbusters were. But we're going to be able to see that right here. So we can see how when these three balls drop, that the one in the middle is going to make its way down the fastest. So that's the way we want to be thinking about how we're going to take our bodies down the mound. Right now, you're taking all the way down and then out. We want to be going down, yes, definitely, but also out. We want to think about going down like a slide. So now we come back to here. So if we kind of drew that down and then out that you're going in, obviously we're not going to do this. We're going to be doing some of that, right? Just like we saw. So now our third mechanical cue is, or this mechanical cue is, don't go down and out. We want to be going, or we don't want to be going down then out. We want to be going down and out. And when we begin to do that, we'll be getting the body going, right? So if we can get the body going before we start going down, we will have created that better route, right? So if we want to work on being better with our path down the mound, we can more easily achieve that by thinking about getting the body going. Get the body going so that way when you go down, you're already going out as well. So if we looked at, let's just find one dude to better help you see this. Let's go. Nah, not John Gray. That's not who I thought it was. I thought it was Sonny Gray. Let's go with, how about Spencer Strider? So we're going to see his back hip is here. Back hip is here. Back hip is here. Back hip is here. And then here. Right? So he didn't go down, then out. It was that down and out route, just like we saw in the Mythbusters. And how did he do that? Look where as this leg is coming up, look where the body was already going. He's getting the body going, getting the body going, getting the body going, getting the body going. So that way, we're creating as much energy down the mound as we can. Drills that we can do to help us with these accomplish our mechanical cues and our adjustments with our mechanics will be added to the end of the video. All right, so we'll let your video play through here 2 times, bud. First time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like synced up from these 2 points of view. The second time the video plays, it'll pause at that moment of foot strike, so that way we can compare and contrast more easily your body's positioning to that of which we just learned with the big league examples. And then we'll discuss the things that we're going to want to be working on over these coming months. Okay, so here we are at that moment of foot strike. And again, that's when this front foot hits the ground for the very first time. We said we want to split our body into two halves at this point. The lower half, we said we want rotated towards the target. And that's both the back hip, back knee, back foot, front knee, and front hip rotated to the target. And again, we want that rotated towards the target before or as that front foot is getting into the ground. And we can see that this back foot has done pretty much nothing at this point in time, which means this kneecap is still facing that first base dugout. And we can tell that that belt buckle, if we had one on, is still facing first base dugout. We come over here to that front view, and we can see as that front foot is getting put in, obviously these stripes down our pants are on the side of our leg, and the side of our leg didn't really get to the side of our body over here. The side of our leg is still in front of our body. So our first mechanical cue for you to be thinking about is this kneecap here, my front kneecap. I got to get facing my target. I got to get this front leg rotated around. All right. I got to get my front hip, my front knee, and my front foot in a better aligned position when it gets into the ground. I have to rotate my front leg. In addition to having to get my kneecap going towards the target when my foot gets into the ground, I also need my back leg to be rotating forward. So we can see your back leg doesn't really do any rotation until now. It's trying to rotate now, but it's in the air. Something that rotates in the air has no impact on the rest of my body. And the only reason that this back leg is rotating is because this back shoulder is forcing it to rotate as it rotates. So as your throwing arm is trying to go forward, watch what it's doing. It's having to now pull this back foot along with it. And now as you're trying to throw this baseball, that's one thing. But if you're trying to throw this baseball and the weight of your back leg, we're not going to throw the ball very hard or accurately. And we're going to be putting a tremendous amount of stress on our arm to make these throws because we're not throwing with our body. We're throwing 100% only with our arm. And when we throw 100% with our arm, we have almost a 100% chance of having arm problems. Whether it's now when we're young or later as we get older and stronger and have the ability to do things more explosively. So the first mechanical cue, kneecap to my catcher. The second mechanical cue is I got to rotate my back leg into my landing. A great example of that is Mr. Chapman. So if we pulled him up here and we just watch this, so boom, at this point in time is close to your point in time of the lower body's development down the mound. Watch how as Chapman continues, that back foot, watch his back foot. See how it's going to rotate into his landing. His foot hasn't landed yet. Foot hasn't landed, now it's landed. We want to drive away from the pitching rubber, rotate away from the pitching rubber into our stride. Now let's go to the back knee. We want to rotate the back knee into our stride, into our landing. The back knee, back foot rotate us down the mound. Our back hip gets to drive forward because of the foot and the knee doing their thing. We can also see the front foot going through its rotation into landing. We can see the front knee going through its rotation into the landing, which then gets the belt buckle going towards the target as he gets into foot strike, versus foot in the ground, foot in the ground, foot in the ground, foot in the ground. We need to use this lower body to accelerate, to propel, to send our body down the mound as much as we can. You're traveling very little distance. If we look at the distance between foot and foot, and then the distance from toe to head, we're pretty close to the same. Here to here or there to there. Some big differences. So that's a good visual for you to see, in addition to all the examples we had in the beginning with the 4 pictures up, to be able to see how we need to use that back leg more. So for our 2 mechanical cues so far: front kneecap to the catcher, and we got to rotate everything on the back side into our landing, not land and then try to rotate everything over here. Okay? And the final thing for you is we need to have an aggressive leg lift. If we want to get aggressive with our legs to send our body down the mound, we can't start any way other than aggressive, right? And what we're going to notice is this leg lift is small, short, and just kind of pushes, you're just kind of kicking it away from your body. We need to raise this thing up high, aggressive, fast, not just kicking it away from our body slowly and gradually. So that's our other mechanical cue, is a good aggressive leg lift. So that way we can remain aggressive down the mound. So that way we have an opportunity to potentially begin to get our lower body to rotate before it hits the ground. And like I said, right now we can just see that when the lower body does get into the ground, nothing has rotated in that lower body, which now results in us having to make a throw with just solely our arm, and not just the arm making the throw, but the arm having to make the throw and bring along all of this leg weight. All right, we're gonna let your video play through here twice, bud. First time will be all one motion, so you can see how you look synced up. Second time, we'll pause it at that foot strike, so that way you can compare and contrast your body's positions to that we just saw of those big leaguers. And then we will discuss what it is we want to be working on. So here we are at foot strike, and like we've been working on, first thing we're going to notice is that kneecap hasn't quite fully gotten itself rotated all the way around yet. So we'll see coming out of foot strike how this angle of the leg will be changing to get that kneecap going towards the target in order for us to be able to get that ball out of our hands. So in order to maximize that upper lower half separation, we need to get that leg, more specifically for you, that kneecap, fully rotated before we get into foot strike, which is what we've been working on for a little bit now, you and I. So we haven't discussed or worked on this part in quite some time because of some of the other things we've been shifting our focus to. But I just want us to become aware of what our hand is doing as it's separating from our glove. And remember, we want this ball to be facing one of two directions during our hand's path to release. And that is, we want the ball either facing the catcher, or for right-handed throwers like yourself, first base side of the field. And what we're going to notice is as that ball comes out of your hand, you are going in the ball towards the catcher. We can tell by seeing that right there. Okay. But then the ball goes from facing the catcher to now facing second base. And because it does that, now this arm is going to kind of just be behind us. There's none of that flipping up to flip back to flip forward again, right? We're going to lose that good whippiness in the arm, which is going to lead to extra stress running through the front of the shoulder potentially, or the elbow, neither of which we want. So we just want to make sure that if we're going to get this kind of longer arm path, that we need to keep the hand inverted from what you have right now. Instead of ball going towards second base like that, how your arm is opening up backwards, remember, we want that elbow to load it back, not the hand. The only way the hand can load it back is if it's in this type of positioning. And that's why we want the elbow to load our arm back. Just like we do our scap rows. That's why when we do our scap rows and our J-bands and all those different movements, it's so important that we get those elbows up. And that's because we're trying to reinforce how we load that arm up. So we need to continue to get this knee fully rotated at foot strike. There's, let's see, one, two, there's at least two, if not three guys that have the same thing as you with this front knee. So you won't be the only one doing drills for that. And you're definitely not the only one who's going to be doing drills for arm path. So, we'll see at the end of the video the drills that we can be doing for the front leg, and then you'll have the additional link to the video that discusses more in detail the arm path. All right, so we're going to take a look at some more arm paths here. Not going to talk about anything with the lower half. Not going to really talk about anything with the glove. We're just going to mostly concern ourselves with just the throwing arm and the path that it's taking from hand separation, into the body getting to foot strike. So from hand separation to foot down, we're just going to watch the path that the arm takes and just see the similarities in the different checkpoints that everyone's getting to, regardless of their arm path or their delivery style. So we're going to see balls falling out of the glove, out of Garrett Cole. And same thing with Jacob deGrom. We can see that the wrist position is the same. So here we get to see the front side, and then here obviously the back side. So we notice the wrist position, top of hands facing the chest, palm in the ball is facing the back. As we extend down the mound, as things get extended down the mound, we can see that hand stays above baseball. Hand is staying above baseball, and the ball is still facing the back. Ball is still facing the back. Hand on top of the ball. Hand on top of the ball. We're in our scap load now. and we're right before our front foot strike. So you see that as we get into foot strike, we're then having that hand flip above the elbow for the very first time. Right as we get in the front foot strike, that hand is flipping above the elbow for the very first time. Before that, the hand remained below the elbow until the scap load right before foot strike. Are we getting this thing parallel? And then same thing here. When this does get parallel, right about here, you can see it's right before foot strike, because the reason that it is parallel is because it's going from down to up. 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 Next we have two more guys who we're going to see are slightly different with their approach of how that ball falls more straight down out of the glove, more straight down out of the glove, as opposed to slightly back and out of the glove like we saw with these guys. I guess DeGrom is pretty down, but still has that slight angle. And then Cole's slight angle versus straight down versus straight down. But then we can still see that the hand, or I'm sorry, rather the wrist and the hand are still in those same positions. Top of the hand, chest. Top of the hand, chest. And then the ball in the palm is facing the back. The ball in the palm is facing the back. So for righties, that means the ball is facing first. And for lefties, that ball is facing third. And then that ball stays beneath the elbow with the wrist in that position for the entire time the arm goes through its arm path. And we can see the arm path here is more slightly behind the body, stroking it up that way. Boom. We see how the elbows are working together, getting into the scap pinch, getting into the scapular load, getting the glove ready to finish. And we can see the very similar movements here as well, where that wrist does not want to deviate from its position. So that way when the hands do get parallel with one another, it's in that scap load. It's in that scap load. And it's right before the front foot hits the ground, which is when hand flips up, right before foot strike, right before foot strike, right before foot strike. Hands slipping up as the back hip's driving forward. Separation, 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 separation. If the hand's flipping up early, we're not going to be able to get this whip and get that throw out front. Get that throw out front. Okay, so now we're going to start to shorten these arm paths up a little bit with these next guys. Make them a little bit more compact, a little less movement. So we're going to see that the ball, when it's coming out of the glove here with Woodruff, the bend of the elbow and the throwing arm isn't going to decrease, or I'm sorry, rather increase beyond much more than this. So it's not falling down like we just saw with Hunter Green. You can see it's more of just a here. But this elbow to wrist is still the same positioning as we see over here. Elbow to wrist. It's relaxed. It's dangling down. Down, 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 down. With the wrist in the same position, with the ball facing his backside and the top of his hand facing his chest side. And then as he proceeds through his arm's path, which is here, he's getting into that scap load. He's loading his scapular muscles. He's pinching his shoulder blades together to load the arm up. And where do we want to load the arm up? Boom, to right here. Now is when things get parallel with the ground. Now is when the hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder get on the same plane because of the fact that the hand is flipping up. And when is it flipping up? Right into foot strike. Right into foot strike. Right into foot strike. So that way we're creating separation. Hand flips up while the back hip drives forward. Hand flips up, backside drives forward, creating separation and whip. Ability then to rotate out in front. Ability to rotate down. Ability to rotate with the body and the arm as a passenger. So then we get even more compact than that. And we got Dylan Cease and Spencer Strider. So we'll take each of these guys from the top of their leg lifts through their hand separation, and we can see something is slightly different now. We can see that the ball is more in line with, if we had to put an object to it, we could say like his knee, his front knee. Or maybe we could say the top of the hand is more towards second base. Top of the hand more towards like shortstop depth. And because of this wrist position, that is determined by how their arm is going to move, their arm's path. How the arm gets up to its flipped position at front foot strike. So if we watch as we take Strider through his movements, he's going to come right to where, very similar position that Dylan Cease is at over there. Very similar positions as well with that throwing arm. Continue to be in similar positions. And more. Boom. And boom. All the way through. right? Like, very much similar. Deliveries because of how their arms want to work. Their bodies throw the ball, so how their bodies move, their arms are going to need to move this way. Boom. But again, that hand is not getting above that elbow until it's time to throw, as it's flipping up the throw. Flipping up the throw. The arm is a passenger. The body is the car. We can't have the arm, the passenger, get outside of the car. We need to take the passenger with the car. So as the car is moving, we got to be bringing it with us. We don't want it to be going the opposite direction as where we're trying to go. Boom, boom. And then we got another guy with a similarly compact arm. And same thing, we see how that ball is more facing home, top of hand's more facing second. And that makes his arm path, arm stroke, whatever you would like to think of it as, more compact. And just still hand staying below elbow until almost foot strike as those scaps are loading together, holding that glove from wanting to open up. Then it flips up just to continue flipping around as the shoulders now rotate. And then even if we have lower arm slots, these things still hold true. Ball's falling out of the glove, ball's facing his back, top of his hands facing his chest. When the hand does get above the elbow, it's because it's flipping up right before a foot strike, flipping up right before a foot strike. The ball is a part of the delivery. We don't want to leave it behind. We take that, a guy like Diaz. Boom and boom with where the ball's at. Boom. Boom. Right, like completely different guys, completely different deliveries, but the arms are just following very similar paths, and that's why they've been around in the game for so long. We can go with more lower slots. Okay, where's the ball facing? It's home. Top of hands more towards that shortstoppy direction. If we look between the legs here, we can see same thing. That ball is facing home. Top of hand to second. Oops, wrong button. Boom. Right at foot strikes when the hand's flipping up. Right at foot strikes when the hand's flipping up at foot strike. Boom. And boom. So getting that trunk through even with a low slot. Boom. Boom. So noticing the guys that got that low slot, where's that arm going most? We got a lot of scapular ability to get that arm retracted deep into our scap. Deep into our scap. Another low guy. Where's that ball? Towards home. Top of the hands towards shortstop. But he's got a lot of that arm being able to retract back into his scap. Just the same. So then, oops, right as that foot strikes current, it's flipping up. Flipping up. Parallel with it. Flipping up to continue to rotate out front. You can look at even lower slot and see a lot of the similarities with how the arm is going to want to move. So as that ball is falling out of the glove, we can see that it's wanting, we can see the top of the hand is going to be towards third, ball is going to be to first. But then again, it gets really retracted back in that deep scap. And we can look at that hand up there. Add this coming through. We're getting back to that top of the hand towards third, ball towards first positioning. And there's that scap pinch again. Right there, coming in that load. And where's that hand? It's back to getting back on top of the ball, above it. So then right at foot strike, boom. He's flipping up into his 90. And down here, 90. But his trunk is tilted so that it all agrees with itself. To still be able to come through out in front with his trunk tilt. Oh, I forgot Brady. Sorry, dude. So we'll finish up with him. Ball's falling out, same way. Ball in his palm towards first, top of his hand is third. Elbow's the reason it's coming up. Loading it up. Loading it up. And so right before a front foot strike, then it's parallel, then it's flipping up into foot strike. Flipping up into foot strike. Flipping up as the foot's landing. Flipping up into foot land. Foot plant. Whatever you like to call it. Boom. Boom. And this is the first time we ever see a ball facing us. Boom. We can get a couple different benefits out of this drill here. The first is learning how to sit into our back hip, how to keep that weight back as our body progresses out towards the target. We can also use this drill to help us continue to feel that hand separation and that good smoothness in where the glove's going. We can work on the arm path while we're doing this drill. And we can also be working on keeping that front leg closed until the drill stops. And once the drill stops, that front foot should be in a neutral or closed position, working on not opening up. We want to get in front of a full-length mirror where we can see from our feet to our head, so we can work on our leg lift. We can work on how we're lifting it up, raising the knee versus raising the foot. We can be working on our good, strong set position, making sure we're not having to rock or sway back in order to get that leg up off the ground, but being already in a weight back position so that when the leg comes up, I'm strong and stable and I'm able to be aggressive. I'm not tipping to the base runner that I'm about to make my pitch. And instead, I get to lift my leg and be aggressive to the target right away. We can use this drill here for a multitude of things. One, we can use this for helping us get some extension in our glove. If our hand separation, our glove path is super short and condensed, we can use this drill to help us lengthen that out. We can also use this drill to help us with our arm path. If we got a long, loopy arm, we can use this to help load that arm up and keep our arm compact. This drill is going to help us be able to learn and train getting our front leg to complete its rotation by the time that front foot hits the ground. Meaning that kneecap getting towards that target, getting the foot more towards that target. So that way our back hip can come through. That way our belt buckle is more towards our target. So this first series here, we're just picking that foot up and we're just rotating it. We're starting it in our bad angle and we're getting it into the good angle. And our second stage here is we're gonna set something out in front of us and we're gonna work on gaining ground as we finish that rotation. So it's closed and then it's finished rotated, it's open at the end. We're starting in our bad position that we're currently getting into and we're moving into the position we want to be in. We can see how that helps get all the lower half to rotate. All right, we're gonna be working on getting our backside leg rotated and driven forward, not just spinning in place. So we can just be sitting on a bench, in a chair, anywhere we can have our hands on either side of it to keep our upper body squared and stable. And we're just gonna be driving through that big toe, which means we're folding over that big toe to get the foot forward, versus spinning in place where the knee stays in place. We need to drive the foot forward to get the knee to go forward, versus spinning in place and the knee not going forward. So we can just sit on that bench, on that chair, and just work and practice this movement here of folding over that big toe, driving your foot forward, getting your heel to be in front of your toe at the end. Another drill here to help us with our backside rotation and drive. We just get ourselves on a bench. It'd be ideal if this bench didn't have this little curve in it and if it was just flat, but we found a way. We're going to be working on, again, driving through that big toe so that way the heel gets in front of the toe, which drives the knee forward, and not just spinning that back foot in place, which just keeps the knee in place. We need to drive the back foot forward to get the knee to rotate forward to get us to go forward. And being on this bench allows us to do that. We don't have to worry about what that front leg is doing so much during this drill because it is just focused on the backside leg. But if we have the ability to start getting the backside really good and consistent, we can start thinking about how long can I keep that front side leg closed while I'm doing this. I can then think about how much am I able to rotate that front leg into the ground towards my catcher, towards my target.